Normally I like to steer clear of politics in my YouTube videos, and perhaps after this video I will be regretting my decision to actually make it. But last week we had Linus Torvalds takes a break from working on the Linux kernel to work on his behaviour towards other developers. Yeah, his behaviour is pretty blunt and to the point. And with his language directed more at a developer's output rather than at a developer's specifically. But now there has been a big change with a new code of conduct which has been implemented. But first let's look back at some of Linus's quotes. I'm not forgetting it all started back in 1991. I'm doing a free operating system, just a hobby, won't be big and professional like GNU, for 386, 486, AT clones. Yeah, who would have thought that Linux would have ended up like it is these days, with such a massive number of developers working on what has to be the biggest open source project going. And no doubt his job is particularly stressful in dealing with awful code from various companies. I do remember one particular quote of NVIDIA FU. Can we say that particular word? I'd also suggest that whoever the genius was thought it was a good idea to read things one effing byte at a time with system calls for each byte should be retroactively aborted. Who the F does idiotic things like that? How did they not die as babies, considering they were likely too stupid to find... Yeah. Pretty abusive there. But in 2015 he did say the most important part of open source is that people are allowed to do what they are good at. And all that diversity stuff is just details and not really important. Too bloody true. And earlier this year we have BS. Have you looked at the patches you're talking about? You should have. Several of them bear your name. As it is, the patches are complete and utter garbage. What the F is going on? But he's actually directing his abuse at either companies or an output of someone's work. And so we come on to the new Covenant Code of Conduct. And we'll look at the actual change to the GitHub page. So all this is new. In the interest of fostering an open and welcoming environment, as we contributors and maintainers pledge to making participation in our project and our community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of age, body size, disability, ethnicity, sex characteristics, gender identity and expression, level of experience, education, socio-economic status, nationality, personal appearance, race, religion, or sexual identity and orientation. Why all this? If you're contributing code behind an ID, does it matter whether you're male or female? Who's to know? What I would care about is the output of the code. I couldn't care less about any of that lot. Our standards, examples of behaviour that contributes to creating a positive environment include using welcoming and inclusive language, being respectful of differing viewpoints and experiences, gracefully accepting constructive criticism, focusing on what is best for the community, and showing empathy towards other community members. Well, I'm a guy, I can't show empathy towards anyone. Examples of unacceptable behaviour by participants include use of sexualised language or imagery and unwelcome sexual attention or advances. That's fair enough, actually. Trolling, public or private harassment, publishing others' private information, all of which is very fair to include. Maintainers have the right and responsibility to remove, edit or reject comments, commits, code, wiki edits, issues and other contributions that are not aligned with this code of conduct, or to ban temporarily or permanently any contributor for behaviour they deem inappropriate, threatening, offensive or harmful. This code of conduct applies both within project spaces and in public spaces. How does what I say in public spaces have any effect on the work I'm doing? Instances of abusive, harassment or otherwise unacceptable behaviour may be reported by contacting the Technical Advisory Board. All complaints will be reviewed and investigated and will result in a response that is deemed necessary and appropriate to the circumstances. And it was signed off by 7 people, including Linus himself. And what it has replaced is the old Code of Conflict. Where you have the Linux kernel development effort is a very personal process compared to traditional ways of developing software. Your code and ideas behind it will be carefully reviewed, often resulting in critique and criticism. The review will almost always require improvements to the code before it can be included in the kernel. This happens because everyone involved wants to see the best possible solution for the overall success of Linux. And at the end we have, as a review of the code, please strive to keep things civil and focused on the technical issues involved, We are all humans and frustrations can be high on both sides of the process. Try to keep in mind that the immortal words of Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other. See, that is very much a focus on getting the job done. None of this, we have to include everyone. The most important part here is the overall success of Linux, not your feelings. This code of conduct has been created from this contributor covenant, which has apparently been adopted by over 40,000 open source projects. Wow, I didn't realise the inclusivity went that far. Here is the framework of the contributor covenant, but it is pretty much similar to what we've just seen in the Linux Code of Conduct. One of the main people behind this is Coraline Ada. Okay. I definitely would say she is very politically motivated. Just looking at some of her Twitter feed. And she has this GoFundMe open at the moment where she wants $10,000 for a Code of Conduct beacon. Over the past several years, Code of Conduct adoptions by open source projects has become the norm for establishing and communicating community values. However, enforcement of Code of Conduct is the real key to creating welcoming and inclusive communities. But up to now, only the largest open source projects have had access to the kinds of resources to make a fair enforcement even possible, let alone manageable. Yeah, because people are generally more concerned about writing code and just getting the job done. Let's just consider that open source coding is not necessarily the primary means of income for most people. Linus and a few people involved in the Linux kernel are the exception, not the norm. The Code of Conduct beacon will be provided in a software as a service model to reduce friction for getting started so that maintainers can focus on managing their projects and communities with minimum setup. So I do have to wonder about what enforcing the Code of Community Standards does mean, particularly when I'm just cherry picking. I've cherry picked just one thing here that Coraline stated that this developer is publicly calling trans people out for not accepting reality on Twitter. His Twitter profile mentions that he is a core contributor to Opal. Is this what other maintainers want to be reflected in the project? So already we're going for the witch hunt option of, I don't like what he's saying, get him out of here. Fortunately, the response was, if you want him removed, start working on Opal and contributing as much as him to everything he did for Opal, so we have a replacement that's more in orientation with your morals and views. Anyway, I did cherry pick that one response, but I don't think that is one isolated incident. Some people have asked why Linux haven't gone for the KDE Community Code of Conduct. I'll just go through the overview. The basic social ingredients that hold our project together include be considerate, be respectful, be collaborative, be pragmatic, support others in the community, get support from others in the community. Now, our community is made up of several groups of individuals and organisations, which can roughly be divided into two groups, contributors and users. That is a really simple code of conduct, and it does expand on all the points, but the basics of it is absolutely something I could agree with. It doesn't go into policing language, but it does make me feel that it would be something I would want to be a part of, and happy to contribute to. Well, that was a bit of a discussion on the new code of conduct in Linux. What are your thoughts? Do you see this as a positive or negative? Or would you have preferred to see the Linux community go down in a different direction, like the KDE Code of Conduct? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, I'll see you all later.